Alrighty, everybody, here we are. 3D modeling in Tinkercad, work in progress, a stackable paint rack for the Artecho paints. And for those of you who don't know, that's what we're talking about, Artecho. These are their metallic paints. There's 12 of these in the box, and we've got another box of 24. And I've made some paint racks before, but these are a little bit of a different style, as you can see here. We've got the round bottom. We've got kind of a tapered tube type thing. It's about 59 or 60 milliliters of paint, which is really cost effective when we're talking about painting compared to the Games Workshop paint. George is back. Howdy, how you doing? Coming to you live from Korea, and George is popping in, so we got that going on. Just explaining on how we are making another paint rack, because the previous paint racks that I've made, they work, and I could probably scale them a little bit bigger, but because of the unique size and shape of these, I needed to come up with something else. And with that, since you can see over on the desk over there, I have minimal amount of space, I need to do something. I thought about doing a rack, doing kind of a rack like you see over there, but then it's like, I need to save some space. And as I was perusing through the interwebs, what I ended up running across was a spice rack. And I was like, and it kind of rotates around, uses a Lazy Susan, and I was like, that's an idea. And then I saw some other ones, and then I, of course, looked at paint racks on like Thingiverse, Printables, Creality Cloud and all those places. And I saw paint racks, but they're normally for the 17 millimeter bottles, which are the small Games Workshop, or the Citadel, which aren't the same. We're not going to have the same dimensions and everything. So I needed to make a custom paint rack. So what we're doing in the process, the work in progress right now, is that paint rack. And we're going to take a look at what I did in Tinkercad. So here it is. This is an 8-inch Lazy Susan, and for those of you that are wondering, I made this specifically in line with a Lazy Susan swivel stand, steel ball bearings model, all that stuff. They have an 8, 10, and 12 inch. Well, I went for the 8-inch one because 8 inches is a pretty decent size. And considering the amount of room that I had on my desk, and then also with the number of paints that I had, I kind of started out with a 10-inch Lazy Susan. That ended up being 14 paints per layer, and basically what I ended up doing was that. And then I was like, so that's 28, and then another 14, whatever that is. I'm not good at math. So anyway, I decided that was a little bit too big, because when you're talking about 10 inches, and then as the cones, the little receptacles that hold the paint in there, you're talking about, I think it was like 11 inches or something. So you're talking about a considerable amount of space that this would eat, compared to an 8-inch, that ended up being more doable. And so instead of going larger with a larger amount of paints, 14 per ring, what we ended up doing is a Lazy Susan at 8 inches, and so that I could get 10 paints per ring. And so basically, yeah, that's what we ended up doing. Kind of a little bit of instruction. If we do a top-down view, we can take a look at this. And I used some cylinders. I took some measurements as far as kind of like, from the cap, that we see from the cap from the top to the bottom. Of course, I did the diameter and all that, and then the overall length of this, and kind of made a little bit of a mock-up. And that's what this blue thing is here. And so this would give me that would give me like an estimated size of the cap and everything, and so that way I could take a look at the cylinders, the receptacles that hold the paint, had to angle them at 28 degrees, so that way it would clear, kind of be tilted enough so that it would clear and go into the have some room, as we can see there. So when the paint sticks out, you know, it wouldn't interrupt with the ring above it and so on and so forth. And then what I ended up doing is taking, and since I had the rings, what I ended up doing is going through and just making a copy and then rotating it around. Of course, you'll be able to rotate it, and then that way you can offset it. So that way you could do something like that. And so you could really get to the point of where, let's see if we can get it, it's kind of like that. So you could do something like that, and so it would offset, and of course you could rotate it in whatever thing that you wanted. George pops up and says, could you modify some extra holes for some brush holders? Yeah, I actually could. That is an idea. I don't know if I would do it in, like I could just end up drilling some holes. So in other words, let's say if I wanted to, but then I would have to have some type of, something to hold the brush. I guess I could just put holes. So I could get something like this and do like a hole, and let's just make this like 5, and then we could bring that up, and then what we could end up doing is just kind of doing some holes like that, and we could drop that down, and then I don't know, I would have to have some type of sleeve, kind of like what we did with the paint receptacle, kind of those cylinders. We could do something like that, but just on a smaller scale, and then just have it all around the bottom. So that's a good idea. Interesting, interesting. So that way you could have a number of paintbrushes sticking out at that same angle. So for example, I could take this and I could rotate it also at 28 degrees. And then I could have a collar. Well, let's just go, let's take this back. Now, let's just delete that. And we could do something like we want to increase the sides, increase the segments. We'll make this, I don't know, we'll make that 30. That could be good, because that would give enough, maybe 35. We'll take it up to 35, and then we could make that, shrink that down to, I don't know, 8. And then if we do a 5 inner diameter, so that's 8, and we do 5, we'd have a 3 wall. Maybe we could take that out to 9. And then what we could end up doing is we could take this here, and since that one's 9, I could do this one at 5. And then we could bring that up. We could do something like that. We could make sure that it's got a hole. Well, I don't think we really need a hole all the way down. So we could just have it go to the base. And then if that is enough, of course I'd have to look at some brushes. A 5, that's kind of small. We would have to, you know what we could do? We could just group this whole thing together, and then we could just scale this, and that would kind of do something there, and then we could just reduce the size to make it like 35. We could do something like that, and then we could rotate it out to 28 degrees, kind of like that, and then, or something similar, and we could do something like that. So that way you could have some, that's a good idea. That's definitely something that would be, that could be doable. All right, that's a good idea. You know, put some of those in there, and that way, if you got a brush, I'd have to do some more measurements on some brushes, and to kind of get a bigger hole, I think. And then, yeah, that would be interesting. So, yeah, that's something we could do. And then all I ended up doing is just taking it and replicating it. And I had a cylinder, which was this cylinder here, except it was all the way up. And I used that as basically as a hole. So I kind of took that all the way up through the center, kind of like that. And then I just had it so that it was a larger cylinder. Let's see if we can kind of replicate this. So basically had a large cylinder that would go up through the center and then made a hole on each of those. And so we ended up with each plate being like that. And then what I ended up doing is making this cylinder. And the whole idea of this, it's 60, and I think the inside is 60. And so basically what you end up with is something like that. And so the piece above it would sit down on that. And so you could basically end up gluing this cylinder holder, and you'd have one of these for each additional level. So your first level being here, then you'd have your cylinder, and then you have your other layer. And then if you printed out another one of these, and it sticks about halfway into the hole there, and so you can kind of glue that, and then you'd be able to do the same thing by doing other cylinders. So you get that support there, and once you glue that in there, you should be good to go. And then this whole contraption would be set on a Lazy Susan. And like I said, over here we've got the Lazy Susan. It's got some ball bearings on there, and yeah, boom. Then you'd be able to rotate the entire thing around, have access to your paints, and you'd be good to go. So since I ended up doing this, and this has been a thing that I've been doing since 5 o'clock this morning, and it's 10:25, finally got it to the way that I wanted with a little coffee break in there. Ended up cleaning up, getting a shower, as if you all care. And what we ended up doing next is exporting that from Tinkercad, just one of the levels and that cylinder base thing. We put it into Creality Print, and let me show you what we ended up doing there. So where is the print, the Creality-ness? There it is. So this is the final, not the final, but it's the test print of this to see if this will work. And again, we're going to be able to test the walls. The thickness of this base is approximately 5 millimeters, so I think that's enough for that. And again, these paints are only 60 millimeter tubes, so I should be able to handle it. If not, I'll just add a little bit more thickness to the base, and we should be good to go. So with this, it is printing out at a 0.2 millimeter layer height, and nothing real crazy. We're doing a 5% infill. Apparently it's gyroid. Yeah, 5% gyroid, and there is the model there. The little white marks, those are the seams. I think I set those to random, but as you can see, we're going to be able to have 4 walls total, so that should be good. I don't know, might have to bump that up to 3. So again, we'll see how that goes as far as the thickness on all of this. So again, we're just kind of do this little thing here, and yeah, there it is. So, and there's the cylinder that we got there. It's about 2.5 millimeters off of that shelf, that little angled area. So we have the angled area here, and then that little inset is approximately 5 millimeters, so, or 2.5 millimeters. So that way it goes halfway into the hole on that base section there. It's about half of that. So if you wanted to do another stack and print out a second one of these, then you could do that, and you should be good to go. Should be. This is a test print to verify the proof of concept. And there it is. So we're printing it off. This is going to be 6 hours and 30 some odd minutes. We got about 6 hours and 8 minutes left. Looks like we're doing pretty good there. So yeah, it's turning out well so far. Keeping fingers crossed as always, because it's Creality, and it is what it is. So that's what I've been working on. And of course, this is all going to be going on to the my Creality Cloud page. So for those of you who don't know, if we take a look at that, if you go to Creality Cloud and you can find the Varied Life, you can see I've got a number of models. All of them are for free. I've got some paint racks, 3D printed cell phone, teleprompter. I got some shelves, different things like that. And then, of course, I got some paint racks that I had made before and some airbrush stands. So all of that is free. And if this works, talking about the new paint rack for these Artecho, which is really good because these are about 71, maybe 72 cents per ounce. Whereas Games Workshop paints, all those little paints in there, are like $6.30 or more per ounce. So, yeah. George says, had to mess things up by asking about paintbrushes. Hey, you know, it is what it is. We could have a version 1, Barney Basic, and then we could have a version 2. So, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I could just end up doing some other versions of that and add in. That shouldn't be too hard. So, and whether, yeah, because you could put in, let's see, let's take a look at the top here, and we could end up with, let's see, we start here, so we could do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we could do, you do 10 little paintbrush holders per level. You know, a little extra filament, it's not a big deal, and printed at the same angle that these are printed at. And yeah, that would be efficient. It would be useful, you know, because you could do your paints and your paintbrushes could all be stored. And on top of that Lazy Susan, you'd be able to rotate it around, have easy access to your paints and your paintbrushes. Sounds like a wonderful idea. Okay. So that's what we got going on, folks. Yeah, I'm Steve, the retired hobby tech guy, American expat in Korea, and this is what I end up doing. Yeah, I'm retired, been here in Korea for just over 3 years now. We got here 3 years ago, 1 October. So I jumped into miniature painting, 3D painting, resin printing, did some laser engraving stuff, and yeah, it's kind of cool. So we've been working on some stuff prior to this. So if you take a look at this, this is the Ripper mask from Borderlands that you could find on Creality, or not Creality, but Printables. And that turned out fantastic. You can see we got the rust in there, the whole 9 yards, and that is going to be pretty cool. With that, as you can see on the desk over there, what we end up having is a Psycho mask. That's the one in blue. And then the one to the right of that in yellow, that's the wife's Ripper mask. And then there's a little pistol on the right side of that as well. So we're trying to get all these things finished before the Halloween. Hopefully we'll be able to get all this stuff going, but we'll see how that goes. But the big Ripper, the big Psycho mask is turning out pretty good. So let's take a look at that, matter of fact. And there it is. So we finished painting up the cobalt blue on there, and that we need to do a lot more distressing on the mask. We've got, you know, some little coloration here that we did with some black, but we need to do some more as far as some warmer colors, some warmer wash, and we're gonna kind of do some line work around here, kind of like in that cell cartoonish type of look thing. We'll do a little bit of that, but yeah, this is turning out really good, and I really like the dry brush silver on the black. But then again, also the black pearl turned out really well. So it has got some, and then the silver is like super silver. So we're going to have to tone that down a bit. And then I need to do some distressing and put some other colors on here for the leather band. So yeah, and this is going to, I think this is going to turn out really good. Hey, we got zombies in the house. We got Ferthus, hey. And so this is going to turn out pretty good. So, and again, the other thing that we can end up doing is I printed out some honeycomb infill, and I have that on the Corrality Cloud site as well. If you guys are wondering about that, let's see. I'll show you where that's at. So the cosplay mask helmet screen, and basically what that ends up doing is printing a honeycomb infill without a top shell or bottom shell layers, and you're able to kind of get that type of action. And so then what we ended up doing is taking that, and we're able to print out a full sheet and cut out for the eye visors. So I'm pretty happy about that. Let me show you. So many pieces and paints. So here is the blue, here is the red, and that's the Corrality colors. And so I could do something like so. Do something like that. Or, like I said before, you could do the blue, and then we could print off a red pupil. So the blue comes out pretty good. And I can also paint this with the cobalt blue that I did. But then the other thing I could end up doing is kind of printing out, you know, an eye slit and kind of do something like that. And then you could actually glue that to the mesh there. And then, you know, maybe I could paint this little piece white, paint it with a fluorescent red, and get it really try to get a lot of glow on that. So that could be pretty interesting. So yeah, I mean, that works out pretty good too. And I can see through it. Everything's good to go. Just kind of like, got like a blue tinge to everything that's on it. So if you like the blue, like the video and put the word blue in there. And let's see how the red goes. Because I'm still undecided on what color I want to use. So with this, here's the red. And if you like the red, then go ahead and like the video and put the word red. So, yeah. Turns out pretty good, huh? Not bad at all. So, but with the red, with the full red, I don't know, maybe I could do a little blue piece for a pupil, kind of like what we did with the blue with the red. Maybe we could do something like that. I don't know. Zombie says, nice. He also says he doesn't know about the blue. Yeah, I know. And I'm not sure about this. I'm thinking about painting this the same color as the stripe, which is the cobalt blue, so maybe that'll work. But the red looks good. I could paint that with a more vibrant red, and then I could do like a little pupil piece in blue with a high fluorescent, shiny, glowing blue. I don't know. Inventive. Hey, welcome to the stream. He votes for red. The red's good too. I don't know. Same as the red, not a fan, but those colors look a bit bright. Yeah, they're kind of bright. That's true. The blue is great, however, the red is a nice contrast. So yeah, that's true. Definitely that red contrast. And then if I printed out this little tiny piece in blue, the same color, you know, paint it with the cobalt blue, that could turn out good. Ferrith has said red is definitely the winner. So yeah, I'll have to print out a little thing and see how doing with a red and do with like you know, with just like a blue little stripe, something like that, that would be the eyepiece or the pupil of that on the red. It would be solid, of course, but yeah. Let's see. Hey, Netventive, that blue paint is great. Yeah, that cobalt blue, and it's a Vallejo airbrush paint. That is a great deep color, and that just turned out beautiful. And that was brushed on there, not airbrushed, but just paint brushed on there, and that comes out really good. So, Zombie Stunner says, "Have you got a black or silver?" Oh, you mean with like this? No, I do not. But now you've got me thinking. Maybe I'll have to, after printing this model, I could do. I don't have silver, I have gray, but I could print the black, and then what I could end up doing is just painting it silver, or I could just take, I've got leftover material of this, and I could just airbrush that silver or whatever. But yeah, that could be good. I didn't even think of that. Silver could be really interesting, especially if I do the same type of silver as these pieces up here. I don't know, that might be a thing, or the really bright silver. That is some really shiny silver. That could be some good contrast as well. Now you got me painting and printing and doing more stuff. I thought I was almost done. You guys, I don't know. But that's the fun of it. That's the fun of doing all this stuff. So anyway, yeah, we're having some fun stuff there. So I'm going to go ahead and put the link to the free models on Creality Cloud for you all, and that way you can check that stuff out. Again, free to use, remix, do whatever you want, just kind of having fun with all this stuff. And then, yeah, interesting stuff. So we have some fun here. As far as the Ripper mask, you can crash bang. Don't you love live stream? You can find this on printables, and so let me pull that up and post that. Printables Ripper mask. Because every time I get somebody sending me an email saying, "Hey, where did you get the mask on printables?" So printables Ripper mask, and that's free, and you can find that. There it is in there. Let's see. Nedventive says bright silver would be great. I'll have to try that. So I gotta. We'll do some black, and then we'll do silver. And we'll see how that goes. And I could do black. So I'll print it out in black PLA. And then what I could do, because the sheets are kind of big, and then I could cut out, again, another template of this in black, and then I could also paint it with the shiny silver and see how that works out. So that's a good idea. All right, cool. Nedventive, thank you very much. Good idea. Zombie Hunter says, "Don't worry if you drop the mask. It just adds a little battle damage." Yeah, that's true. And the good thing is, like I said, I think I used 3 walls. I think I did. Yeah, I did 3 walls on this with 7% infill. So, and I've dropped it a couple other times, but no problems whatsoever. I could probably even drop that down to 5% and save a little bit. And I'm kind of between doing, I think this was gyroid, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm kind of doing some more stuff with Anycubic, adaptive cubic, or whatever it is. We're checking that out, so we'll see how that goes. But this mask turned out pretty good as well. But in hindsight, I'm thinking maybe I should have made it a little bit bigger. But you know, it turns out pretty good as well. So yeah, do all that stuff. So brilliant marketing campaign for Borderlands by making a free mask for everybody. More companies ought to do that. In other words, do the opposite of what Games Workshop is doing. So anyway, well, that's what we got going on. The wife just waved at me, and we were going to go have breakfast, so I got to cut this video short. But thank you, Naventive and everybody else. We'll print out some more of this material, and we'll get that onto the next stream, maybe the next stream, because by the next stream, this prototype for this paint rack should be done. And again, yeah, that's the little thing we're doing. We're just going to paint one of these, and we're going to paint that little center thing there. So we're printing out one of these and one of the racks, and we'll see how those fit together and do that. Ends up, Zombie says, someone's in trouble. Well, no, not really. Okay, well, anyway, thanks everybody for standing by. The wife and I are going to go get something to eat and kind of enjoy our Sunday, because it is Sunday here in Korea. It's approximately 10:45, which is a good time to go get brunch, and we will see you all on the next video. Thank you very much for all of the suggestions. It was really, really cool, and the obligatory outro clip. There's the email address. Email me if you just want to say hi, send pictures of whatever that you end up doing. I'd love to see it. And then if you want to buy me a coffee with, no, it's these people over here. They bought me coffee. That's in the link. That's cool if you do. If don't, what I would prefer is if you like the video and subscribe to the channel. That would be the best thing that you could do. Okay, with that being said, Zombie, Net, Ferrithus, anybody else that's watching, thank you for watching the video. I appreciate it. And Zombie, with that pinky wave, yep, the obligatory pinky wave, and we will see you all on the next video. Ferrithus, have a good day, Steve, and you too as well, sir, and everybody else. So, namaste. Thank you, kamsahamnida, for the thumbs up on the video, and like Ferrithus says, we will see you soon. Alrighty, good stuff. Peace.